From a very early age, we're encouraged to be a specialist. Choose a career, pick a lane, stay in it, go deep. Now, naturally, you want your brain surgeon to be a specialist, but I wonder if that's true for most of us. What happens when the skills that you have acquired become irrelevant, or if you face into a situation that you're not prepared for because you don't have the skills? My guest today is Kieran Cornwall, and he says that he has built a career as a generalist, and he thinks it's a distinct edge. He says that instead of drawing a map that gets him from age 20 to age 60, he developed a compass, which will help him navigate to his next step. And he says that it's taken him far further than specialising ever could. In this episode, you'll hear how having a generalist mindset can help you adapt to new situations, connect different skills together, and unlock opportunities that wouldn't be there if you just stay in your lane. Let's get into it. Kieran, from early days, even at school, we're told to specialise, pick a lane, pick a career. We're really being told to become a specialist. But I know that you, across your career, have seen it different. You've made a career where you've become a generalist. What does that mean? What's the difference between a generalist and a specialist?
It's a really good question. And to your point on schools, I think is a good place to start there because, and I'm sure we've all gone through it, or some probably who may be listening are going through it, is that I never really knew what I wanted to do. I find when I speak to people that have just left university, some still don't know what they want to do. And everyone is following that predefined path into this world that is a mishmash, spaghetti junction of things that are out there and jobs that you may be able to do. So when I talk about being a generalist, it's about really understanding what are the base models of things that are always true in the market, in life. Maths, always a good example. Science, there are a lot of standardized natural staples that will not change unless you really push some boundaries. And English for communication within the UK is an example. That will always be a continuity point. Everything else in general, things are always changing, technology especially, the way we work. And it's about finding all of those valuable skills in a multitude of different arenas and bringing them all together under your banner, not someone else's, not what someone else expects, to make sure that you've truly understood what you've learned and how you articulate what you've learned and start to build those puzzle pieces in the wonderful mosaic that will be your future and career.
So, when you leave school, for example, or maybe even when you leave sort of your A levels and go into university or even beyond university, maybe you've decided you're going to go into medicine or you're going to go into science or become an astronaut or sport or something. So to a degree, you are specializing, but still within that, you can be either a deep specialist. I know that when we were preparing this, you talked about, for example, a kidney expert. So he's a doctor, but he's a kidney expert. But equally, you can also still be a generalist and you can still be adaptable, particularly you and I are both in technology.
Yes. Yeah. And it's a really good point. And I'm not here to say don't specialize. That would be an exceptionally naive and stupid thing to say. I like my doctors to specialize. I think it's very important that they know the very unique space and arena that they work within. But it would be interesting to know how much time and investment is available. That I know they're under an incredible amount of stress and pressure continuously, but how much time do they do to investigate new areas? And as you rightly pointed out, we were discussing areas like nutrition. We've got this huge push in and around mental health and how that affects the body as well. So I think and I can't speak directly from any true depth of knowledge from a medical point of view, but we're learning new things all the time. And are the individuals that are now in that space where this entire world of medicine is changing, are they adapting? Are they learning new things, or are they still in that lane? So, and I'm sure this will probably be quite spicy for some, but how many doctors are just treating the issue that's in front of them rather than truly understanding the problem? Is it nutrition? We all know it is. I think if you honestly look at each other in the eye, it is nutrition.
Yeah.
But then we don't address it. We just address the problem, not the issue. So the specialist point, yes, to start off with, it's important. You need to understand the grounding and what you're doing and why you're doing it. But the importance of generalizing is, well, what did you learn from elsewhere that's going to change the way you approach something? How do you be different? It's almost like breaking away from the industrialization of the process. I feel that a specialism, more often than not in every field, but would be quite broad brushstroke here, is true or false. I feel generalist is shades of grey. Let's look into it and discuss.
Yeah. And again, when we were preparing, you talked about the concept of, instead of having a map, and very simplistically, that is, at a certain point, let's say 20 years of age, you go, that's my map. And I'll get to 60, I'll have completed my map and I'm done. Whereas you say it's much better to develop a compass so that actually you can decide what your next step should be and how you should approach any given situation. So you're not stuck and rigid. You can be really flexible, really adaptable, and handle what's thrown at you.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I would be really grateful if I can be done by 60. But that's a really good point, because there is I think there's a hell of a lot of preconditioning put into people, from parents through to teachers, through to every system that we go through. There is that preconditioning point. And to your point about that map is already set, you could we have compasses with maps, but it's to get to the destination that the map set for you. So you're never really exploring. You've kind of got that. You mentioned 60 there. Everyone's got this set destination. I get a house, I put into my pension, I do all these things, and then it ends. It's like the end of a journey. There's no exploration in that. Very rarely is there. It's only when you've got the courage to move away from the map. And this is what about building a compass is all about, is the fact that you are moving in a direction. Just understand what direction you're moving in and what is that actually going to give you and benefit you.
Yeah.
So I know that sounds extremely ethereal. We should probably dig into that a bit.
Yeah. And I know that across this conversation, we're going to talk about what that means for somebody's career and how they traverse different challenges and how they are flexible, and the impact that has on their CV. So later on, we'll talk much more about this, but I'd like to ask you this question. If I am someone who doesn't just say, right, I'm going to be a doctor for the rest of my life, but I almost say, yep, for the next 3 years, I'm going to be this kind of a doctor. And then for the next 3 years, maybe a slightly different type of doctor. And then maybe a bit more. Isn't there a danger that my CV just ends up being a jumble? I mean, again, you and I are both in technology. If you rock up with a CV where you're in different domains and you're doing different things, and sometimes you're an engineer, sometimes you're a leader, it's really hard to look at that CV and say, I understand what this person is and I know what they can do for me next.
It's a very good point. And I think you actually give two very good examples there, because your first articulation of it was a doctor that was in is still working in the same field. I think it's worth adding, we'll go back to the kidney specialist. I do this, but then I move into another field and I learn more, and it's a complementary skill. So you're adding width to your breadth of knowledge. So that is still within the same field. So I think you've got a really good point there and I'll be very transparent about myself, that if I look at my CV now and I know that CV goes out there, I find it very difficult in this market. I'm very lucky. I know people that know me and what I'm capable of, and we talk regularly, and I tend to follow them and they trust in me. But the fact is, if you look at my CV, it is a strange mess. I've worked in banking and finance, through to media, to worked in quality assurance testing. I've done test automation engineering. I've worked regularly with cloud. I continually build stuff at home. And I'm now working in alliances with a consultancy to arguably to a degree in sales to some respect. So it's this real mishmash of stuff, but it's all of the compounding understanding that I've built in different arenas that allows me to articulate things in a particular way. And
Yeah,
it's just,
and your CV hasn't happened by accident or mistake. It's not like you're drifting. You've made a series of choices to say, I'm going to do this next, or an opportunity comes up, as you say, for example, from media to some other domain, and you've made the choice to go do that.
yeah, that's absolutely spot on. And that every single choice that was made was exactly for the reason for actually putting something new on my CV. Actually, that's the exact choice that I made. So if I look back and I will kick off moving into ITV, I was there as a quality assurance manager. I was head of test for a little while there as well. And it was a huge jump for me, completely different world. So I was in finance, lots of rigor, lots of control. And then moving into a world of media that was fast moving, real top end engineering, some of the best people I've ever worked with in that space. I was working with them and I felt I was caught short. I'm looking around and I'm like, I do not fit in. And to your point about the compass, I panicked if my map was set and I'm sitting there and go, well, I am this person. So I went in as a test manager. At the time, I was writing loads of documents that no one read. But that's what I had. That was in my arsenal. That was my kit bag. And I panicked, kind of freaked out a little. What do you do? All of a sudden, you're in this world that you've given a title, which we'll probably come on to later, but it doesn't mean anything because this is how they work. So I had to come in and learn an entire new way of operating, what they meant. But the difference being is that because of that idea of the compass is that I'm willing to learn. And I had zero, I was walking around to people, just, will you help me? Please understand this. I'm willing to learn.
That's so very difficult to do that, isn't it? And yet it's also so powerful to say, can you help me?
It is, yeah. There was a very defining moment, if I'm honest. I still speak to the individual that did it to me. I say the same story seems to resonate across the years, but it will carry on. But anyway, we had a quick chat and he pretty much pulled my career apart in about 20 minutes. He did it very well. There were no holds barred though. And I went home, lost a night's sleep, come in the morning, went to speak to him again. I think he may have been expecting an argument or a challenge. And it was just, I need your help.
Mm-hmm.
Genuinely need your help. And
Mm-hmm.
he gave it all fantastically. Everyone in that team and group came together as well, set out a path of education. And I chunked back, I was 25, 26 at this point. And I was like, right, I need to change. I need to change everything about the last 5 years in my career and I'm going to go do it. So I just did it every night, 2 to 3 hours a night. I was lucky because I found out I love software engineering, love it so much. And it was, but still taking all of the stuff that I'd learned for the last 5 years, discarding some of it, but bringing through those core principles that are still foundational to everything I do today. So it's always about picking out the nuggets as you go, these little assets of knowledge as part of that compass to go, actually, this is complementary. This is a skill. This is knowledge. And I'm compounding on those baselines all the time. That's really how we want to be articulating it. And the CV, I'll be honest, is an idea from a bygone era. It's broken. And it will never help me. A CV will never help.
Yeah. And so you either deliberately or just by evolution, you've become a generalist. What does that mean? And if people are listening and thinking, you know what? Yeah, I'm actually a specialist. I'm extremely narrow and a little bit trapped. Maybe if I opened myself up a little bit and became a bit more of a generalist, a bit more flexible.
Mm.
What's the value? What does that change for that person? What's it changed for you?
Just what has changed for me is actually not being afraid to grab new things. And I really want to get into some hard stuff in a minute because a lot of this it feels quite ethereal, right? People are going to be listening and saying, yeah, fine, I will grab new things. And yes, I will try to learn them. But I think it's really important that we cover those points of mastering those arguably first principles. right? To understand, and that's the key word I want to linger on, is you have to understand something. I wouldn't say you do, and as a generalist, you don't necessarily have to know. I've got a huge passion about understanding. I want to understand how a fridge works.
Hmm.
Will it be valuable to me? Maybe one day, I don't know, but it's nice to know how it works. How does an electric car work compared to a combustion? Do I really need to know? But it's valuable. And all of these things, and what I mean about mastering first principles, like I said right at the start of this, some things will never change. Maths will rarely change. Science will rarely change, again, pushing the boundaries. And there are certain things that you do in work that won't change. Being a good communicator, being open, and very much in the software engineering world, a server is still a server, whether it lives in the cloud or underneath your TV in your home. A network is still the same. An IP address is still the same. Understanding how all of those things structure together gives you the base architecture of how the world operates. It will always be the same. And what I hear a lot of the time, and I think there's actually been a bit of a, especially in the software engineering world, it's been blown out the water now. I'm not going to use those two letters that we have to hear every day.
The ones
I'm going to
the
go,
ones that are I and A, but in a different order, right? Yeah,
that's the one. Correct.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll avoid that as best we can throughout this whole piece. It's blown everything out of the water. But if we go back everyone was talking about you need to go learn to code, or everyone was learning front end coding, right? So imagine taking the perspective of front end, and I'm going to have loads of engineers post on this and go, I can't believe you even use this as an example, but we'll give it a go. Basically, what you're doing is you are painting or building the outside of the house before you build the foundations. Right. So everyone was going and learning, I'll learn HTML because that's fun and it looks pretty. So, but you're painting the outside of a brick wall with no foundation. So
Yeah.
actually it's the server that sits there and serves that. How are you even going to get that out to the rest of the world? And how do you make sure it doesn't fall over? How do you make sure it communicates or stores information? So everyone was focusing on this thing at the front and not really going, okay, they didn't understand how it all worked. Because the second you have to deploy something, you're now involved in a server, an IP address, and getting it out to the world. You need to understand how the internet works. Still unwilling to bet. I'm not going to broad brushstroke here because I don't know the audience, but how many people do know how it works? So it's about that mastering first principles. Come all the way down. Use a doctor. There are some baselines you need to understand. Pick a career. There are just baselines. But if you look at all those career baselines, and as a quality assurance, and I could take quality assurance from I could take it from software engineering. You could apply that to any industry. I'm quite obsessed with the aviation industry and the testing in and around that. I like my airplanes to stay in the air. I'm glad they test them as good as they do.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And the cost of a mistake there is pretty high, isn't it? Let's
So,
get practical. So you're going to leave behind for the audience a document which has got loads of links and references to things about how to learn, about how to develop yourself, about how you yourself have also progressed across your career. Not in a kind of like, hey, look at me, Kieran kind of way, but in a way that can help other people. But I know that you have, you've mentioned this a few times already, first principles, grounding principles, I beg your pardon. And there are three of them. The first one is mastering first principles, and then you have connecting skills, and then you have experimenting. Let's walk
yeah.
through those one by one. What do you mean by mastering first principles?
So I think we covered it slightly, but I'll give it a bit more depth. And unfortunately, I will always be falling on the software engineering side of things. That's my base background. So going all the way down to everyone uses a phone every day. Right? It's a piece of hardware. I'll just freeze it. Start again.
Yeah. Okay. Let me ask that a question again, right?
Yeah.
Because then it's easier to cut it in. Okay.
Mm.
And also, I think my intro is a little bit shit, to be honest. So, okay. So Kieran, you are going to leave behind a document which has got lots and lots of links to reference points that have helped you across your career, but can also help everybody else to develop themselves and have a career path. But you have this idea that there are three grounding principles that everybody should get hold of, which gives you a solid base from which you can operate. And that allows you to be a specialist to a degree, but also to be flexible, to become a generalist and to be adaptable. Now, your three grounding principles are to master first principles, then connecting skills, and then experimenting. Let's take those one at a time. What's
Yeah.
mastering first principles?
So I will lean on and stick with the simplicity of the world that I understand, which is within this software engineering and hardware world. And let's just take a mobile phone. Everyone's using it every day. It is a chipboard with a CPU, RAM, various other aspects connected to it, and it connects to the internet by pure magic through Wi-Fi and 5G, right? But within that, and then that's what we understand. That's the broad brushstroke. It just does what it does. But when it's interesting when I have friends turn around and go, "Well, this is broken," or "It's not working." Well, I've made the time to understand that almost the first principle of the fact. Well, okay, when was the last time you actually restarted your phone?
Mm-hmm.
Because you've had 700,000 Chrome tabs open and the RAM is completely flush. Start your phone; it will all probably start working again because it resets the baseline of the operating system. And I have a lot of my friends just, yeah, sure, fine, I'll restart it. They had no interest in what I just said. But the fact of the matter is that because of those grounding principles, that I know that, well, RAM is random access memory. It's used for short-term storage. It gets clogged quite a lot, right? So it's not that I don't know how RAM works at the hardware level, but I know what it does, and I understand
Mm-hmm.
how it operates, because you have to, it's short-term space, not in the hard drive. Just clear it down every now and then. Job done. So it's not those first principles about understanding how something or some process or some aspect actually fundamentally works. How does a 2.4 gigahertz signal differ from a 5 gigahertz signal on your Wi-Fi router? Right? And which one do you connect to and why? Right? 2.4 gigahertz travels much further, but is not necessarily as strong. 5 gigahertz, you'll get more throughput, but it won't travel as far because it's to do with radio waves. I looked it up. I'm not saying I'm a specialist in this field. I just understand that that's what it does and that's how it operates. So there's the first principles, because it just allows you to understand when something else happens. How do I almost root cause analysis? How do I debug down to the lowest level? So you can pick any career, any skill. If I'm a footballing coach, right? What are the first master principles of playing the game of football? Controlling the ball, accuracy. And you're going to start bringing all these things down. Sports science, take your pick. All of them have base fundamental principles that will never change. Understand them. You do not need to know all of them. Understand, and you will start linking them together. The puzzle pieces match. It's not just this big thing of blue sky now. I can find a cloud, I can find a mountain. And that's the whole point of the compass. And that actually, so I'm kind of answering them all here, but then you mentioned about that. That's almost the tough bit, if I'm honest.
So actually, I want to dive in because I think you had a really good example there. I've often looked at, I'm a football fan, and I look at a top flight manager, let's say Pep Guardiola. I'm not a City fan, I'm a United fan, but we'll pick him because he's well known. The things that he does is not a lot different to the to the manager that coaches my kid on a Saturday afternoon. Yeah, there are, as you say, foundational principles, as you say, controlling the ball, passing the ball, running, a little bit of space awareness. Pep's not doing radically different stuff to that, is he? So he's got that set of basic principles to work from.
Exactly. And it's a great example, because what are all the things that he learned along that path that actually turned him into the manager that did that? We won't start talking about money and players. We'll leave that out of the equation. But you've still got to bring those players together. You can have all the money. You've seen it before in other football teams. The Real Madrid Galacticos back in the day. They still lost games. They had terrible games. You bring together a load of specialists, arguably from a football perspective, in a room. If you had 11 Ronaldos, that team won't work.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely won't work, because where's the workhorse? Where's the person who's quite happy not to have any of the glory and just do the right job? It's the same thing, and so to your point, Pep Guardiola would have done other things. He was a footballer. He understands the base first principles, but then what did he learn to bring a team together? What did he learn when the pressure's really on and you're down in that game and you're all struggling? What did he learn in time, and what did he say to turn those players' psyches around to go the extra mile? That
Yeah.
I
And
guarantee it wasn't from directly just kicking a ball.
true. And also he is a generalist in a sense because he understands how to play football. He understands how to motivate people. He understands how to organize. He understands a bit of strategy. So to a degree, he is a generalist.
It's, and you know what, your point around organisation there is a really important one, because I had a few friends who struggled with their career for a little while, and I was like, you are incredible organisers. You are an incredible rallying person that when something's given to you, it gets organised, it's done, regimented to the point of brilliance. You should be articulating that as your base skill. I get things organised and done,
Yeah.
and you've proven it time and time again. So, and we'll go all the way back to the CV. This is where it fails. If you put "I'm a good organizer" on your CV, no one cares. And it doesn't make any sense. You have to know people. And someone will say, oh, it's about the interview. Yeah, but you can't get to the interview first. It's
Yeah.
so hard. So
Yeah.
it's a dangerous game. I'm talking about, yes, the generalist thing, but I actually want to empower people that once you are through the door, talk about your generalist pieces. People ask about personal hobbies a lot now. And that is actually the only question I feel that gets asked in a job where I'm looking for complementary capability or capability I don't even know I might need as an interviewer. What have you got? Tell me. It's about you. What have you learned elsewhere? What do you bring to the table? It's exciting. And that leads on to
Yeah.
the next bit, which is the complementary skill bit. That's where the fun happens.
Yeah.
That's
I
for
want to
me.
go, I want to go back just briefly because I was at
Yeah.
year 11 welcome evening last night for my son. And one of the things they said was, we're going to have one of the selection panel from Oxford University, right? Because he's about to do his GCSEs and that stuff's coming up at some point. We're going to have Oxford University guy there and he's going to talk about the selection process. And he said more and more and more now, they're looking beyond someone who's got like straight nines and they're talking about what else do you do? What's your extracurricular thing? You know, what sport do you do? What music do you do? What charities do you get involved with? And all of that more general stuff is becoming much, much more important than just straightforward hard results.
It really is. And if anything, we really have at home, I think, a really difficult point for young people in that space right now is that, it would have been mentioned a million times before, but degrees used to be a difficult thing to achieve. And they weren't the necessary norm. Now everybody has one. So to your exact point, you've played it, and I can understand the sheer level of frustration from people going through that right now. Is that I've done what I was told, I stayed in my lane, and I excelled in my lane, and now you're telling me that I should have done more, which I think is just unbelievably shocking and terrible. It's a real shame because people work so hard, and sometimes even those top end grades, they're asking you for more. So this is why I think a talk like this today is really important, because that is the only way you stand out now. You've worked hard, you are exceptional, you've got those grades, but they're looking for you. The grades are just grades. They're looking for you. What do you do? The good organizer. I run my local charities food hall. Genuinely just plucking stuff out of the air now. And I'm just, it really does actually floor me a little bit. I feel lucky for what I've gone and done. But and I'm glad we're here talking about this because I want them to understand that, I know you're looking at doubling down on all those results, but now more than ever, it is important to have something else. And that could just be a hobby, right? I'm not going to say you have to go and run out and spend hours upon hours in the charity, but have a bit of that generalist aspect because they can see that you're good in one field. What have you got in the next? Going back to pet.
Who are you, really, isn't it?
Who are you?
Who are you? So we've talked a lot about mastering first principles, and those first principles will exist in any profession. They'll be different, but there'll be a set of first principles to just sort of grab hold of and be good at as a baseline. Your second point is called connecting skills. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So I think, and actually this comes back to ensuring that we're not treating or demonizing the specialism. So we're in a space and we do a particular thing. So if I take software development, right? Everyone's aware, everyone's been told you have to do it at some point. So software development, what does that really mean? But how many complementary skills are there in and around software development? And so if I'm going to start moving in this particular ecosystem of development, there is, well, if any code I write, I need to put it somewhere. It needs to live somewhere on the server so others can use it. So I need to understand a bit about that, right? If I'm building this stuff, but I don't have a front end, I don't have that website that connects to all this stuff, then no one's ever going to use it because they can't see it. And historically, these things are compartmentalized, right? You'll go to the individual that builds the server, go, well, I've done my bit, do your bit. And same with the front end. And that's all changing now as well, because now what you have to do is go, well, it's great that you've got this, but if you don't understand that bit, how do you know you're writing the bit in the middle well? And how do you know that it's just knowing a little bit about a server will mean that you will write your code in a different way? Knowing that it's going to serve a front end customer through a website, you might write your code in a different way. If you're writing front end stuff, you need to know what your customer likes, because you can't just write the front of a shop window without knowing, are we even going to get a customer and what would make them come in? So we're going from development to front end to user experience to deployment, servers, cloud. All of those things are complementary skills depending on where you're rolling in that career. If I turned around and just all of, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So what I think I'm hearing there is that you've mentioned software engineering, and clearly there's a lot to it. So I might be a really good back-end engineer, but if I'm not aware of the rest of the steps, then I cannot perform my job very well. So although I might be a specialist, having that generalist knowledge will really help me excel at my role.
Yeah, I think it's just something there that I think there are some very exceptional people that only know those things. And they are very, very good at their jobs. But they're very, very good at that job. And they will do what they can in that ecosystem to the best of their ability. And it will be great. But my challenge would be, are you missing anything? Because, okay, I've built you this beautiful architecture that will serve you anything. And the other thing, yeah, but we don't want that. Mm-hmm. We only need this little thing. What you've built is amazing and it's first class and it's all of the greatest principles we could ever imagine, but kind of, we don't really need that. And so it's the minutiae of like looking over the fence. And I only use these examples because I think traditionally that world has always been quite siloed. I think if we go back to the doctor, to your point earlier, it's, doctors do a lot of internships in other fields on a regular basis. And that is compounding their skill set. But if I was a kidney specialist, as an example, is it that much of a big leap, or is it complementary? How far are we going apart here if I just jump to the liver? I have no idea. They are very different organs. I'm not going to argue about that. I'm sure that, I'm hoping no specialists listen to this and give me a call afterwards, but there are going to be some complementary aspects of those two things. If you run off to go, well, I'm actually going to understand, like I say, jump out and do nutrition directly. It doesn't necessarily, we know it does, but if you buy the written word of medical, do they directly relate? Yes. But is it going to compound your knowledge on the liver or the kidney that much? Maybe not. But you're going to find out something new. Would it change the way that you do the stuff you currently do? So it's about getting external influences to give you that next idea, almost forcing yourself, get out your lane, get out of the lane and go do something new. I have one very quick story on this one. And I'll try and keep it short and quick. One guy at school knew he wanted to be an actor throughout, absolutely jealous of the guy. Unequivocal force of nature, off he went. And he went and he delivered it in his way and he made it and it was great. And always been jealous of him. And he's actually a movement teacher as well as a voice actor as well. It's very impressive. And I got in touch with him and it was actually really interesting catching up after many years. But I asked him to teach me. I was going to do a presentation. I'm a reasonably confident speaker, but I've got an individual there that is a specialist in that field who has practiced it for a long time. And I've got an opportunity to learn something and bring that into my field. It was unbelievable. I learned the voice is crazy. And
Yeah.
listening to someone like that who could truly teach me something different completely changed the way I talk, the way I deliver things, the inflection of my voice, absolutely everything. And that was off 2-3 hours with someone. So go find someone completely out of your field that you think, but that's still complimentary. I'm here today talking with you. When I go give presentations to anyone, anywhere, it makes a difference. But no one in most, let's just say, office jobs would turn around and go, I think you should go speak to our voice actor. No one would tell you that. They'll go take a certification in business
Yeah,
analysis.
exactly. Exactly. And also I was reflecting as you were talking there about the doctor, and we've talked about software engineering. They're both ecosystems, aren't they? Like the whole
Mm-hmm.
body is an ecosystem. So you can be a specialist in the kidneys. We've talked about that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But the liver is also right there, and the lungs and everything else, and they are connected. And so having an
Mm-hmm.
awareness of the rest of the ecosystem, just like software engineering, where you must understand servers and networking and actual computers and front end code. It's the the ecosystem. And the more you know about the whole ecosystem, the better you can be at your job.
Absolutely bang on the money. There's absolutely nothing to add to that other than spot on. And it is exactly that. But then I think there's always, and that's the next bit about these connecting complementary principles. Then there's the poison of things that just make zero sense. And to my point, if you were sitting in an office, they'll go tell you to go take a certification, right? Or
Yeah.
picking out business analysis is a very important role. But then this is where the fun for me begins. And I think people need to enjoy this a little bit. We need to bring learning back and trying new and exciting things for fun, because we miss that. And you learn more when you have fun. Pick something that's completely and utterly cross-contextual, makes zero sense, but it will add something. I like playing poker. Right? The rules are pretty simple. Yeah, it's not about that. It's more about reading people, and it's about challenging each other. And there are skills you could take from that. And you see, let's take sales. It would probably help if you were a regular poker player, because you're going to start reading signs. You are going to attempt to hide yours. I know it sounds a bit deceitful, but I've
And be
picked out
very,
sales
very
there.
cautious now about the signs that I'm sending out in case you're reading me.
I wish I was that good a poker player, but I'm genuinely
Okay.
not.
Okay.
But there are valuable contextual pieces in and around that game that you can apply. Chess, million different computation, millions of different computations, but there are patterns, there are things that you learn. And what do you learn by playing a game regularly? New things, different things. And how do you bring that into work? We just need to be pushing out a little bit wider. Cooking, great example, right? You follow a recipe and you begin to follow a recipe, you're in your lane. You build up experience, you enjoy it a little bit more, and you start throwing in things to that recipe you shouldn't. Hopefully most people would start, when you start learning the baselines of cooking. What does a good sauce mean? Tomato-based sauce, bechamel sauces. I'm not saying I'm a good cook here. It's all my wife.
You
But
sound it.
it's learning from my wife. I learned from someone else. I'm able to take anything from this. And I was a terrible cook. All of it has come from my wife over the last 15 plus years. But again, you are following a recipe to learn the baselines, so you don't need the cookbook anymore. And you can start experimenting, and you're bringing in new things all the time. That's where the fun happens. So we've got and I want to be really clear, like, as much as this generalist conversation is about, there are first principles, understand where you want to operate, understand those first principles. It's hard work. It can be a bit laborious, and that's often where we begin. Then you've got the directly complementary things. How do I know that if I lean to the right in this field, it's directly complementary? It would just boost my master principles. Then there's the wild stuff. That's where the fun happens. And we just don't do enough of that. And that's really when, to your point about people want to see who you are, that's the big piece. That's the differentiator where we go, wow, you've tried all those different things. I love hearing about worldly people. I spent another wild time in my career. I was teaching people software engineering, coding, and met some amazing graduates and one of which had just traveled the world with his family for 3 years. What a most incredibly well-rounded person. And he had attributes and skills that couldn't be put into, no, he was just so incredibly worldly and far beyond his years communicatively. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Sounds like I miss him. I should have kept in touch.
Yeah. So your third, I think we're straying into it now, but your third one is experiment.
Yes.
And it sounds to me like you've already touched on that, which is go do something different. Is that what you mean?
No, actually, because the cross-contextual stuff, yes, go do something different, but we naturally, as a pattern, fall into something that is relatively still within our realms of comfort or enjoyment. And sometimes you have to go do things that are discomforting. That's where I think the experiment comes in on both sides. So the cross-complementary contextual piece, experiment, doesn't really matter if it goes wrong. But the experiment piece is about actually making the mistake. So sometimes it's actually taking a leap and I'm not saying jump out of your career and go from X to Y. What I'm saying here is find something small. The point of an experiment is to actually fail, right? You're pushing way outside of your normal boundaries. It's almost like the couch to 5K example, right? Or let's just call it couch to marathon, a little bit more of a realistic boundary of craziness. You're not going to run out and do a marathon tomorrow, right? You're going to go, and it's not, some people say, oh, it's always the first run. Once you're through that, it's the hardest. I'm sorry, that's a complete lie. The hardest will be like the 5th run or the 7th when you're tired and you don't want to do it. Now you're at the experiment point because you're at the point where you don't want to do it anymore. And are you going to want to push through? And it's okay to not. I don't want people feeling the pressure I should be running marathons. It's painful. Do it if you really feel like it. But actually push a little bit further than you normally would. So if you're going to go out and do something, actually have a little bit of a compass point to go, right, how far am I willing to go and what directions am I willing to go in? And have a failure point and a success point because you have to keep cutting away because what you don't want to do is step too far into the wildness. So again, your point around that CV, what could be deemed to be a mess is really resonating throughout this entire conversation. So it's important that you run off and do those things short, sharp. Will it fail? Will it not? Is it complementary and can I make it work? So that's why I have those 3 things. Build the foundations of the house, build all of the complementary things in and around it to make a house, and then decide what am I going to do? What wild thing am I going to try next? Because it's always about, and none of it has to be, I'm very frustrated by hard and soft skills. I really don't like the articulation of that. And social skills are more important now than probably they ever have been in the world of work. So we should respect those just as much. So do I go to an open board game night, just go meet new people? It might fail catastrophically, but you'll gain something from it. It takes bravery, takes all of these things, and it builds you up as a person.
Let's wrap all that together. So you got your 3 founding principles. So master your basic principles, connecting skills, and experimentation. Let's think about somebody who is in work. Let's try and think of something different rather than software engineering. Let's try and think of, I don't know, sales, for argument's sake. Somebody who's in sales. How do they apply those 3 things? And, we don't necessarily need to be specific if we don't understand what salespeople do, but what should they do? How should they begin to apply this?
That is a really good question. And actually, sales is still pretty close to my heart because I work very close with a lot of brilliant salespeople. And what is really important, I think we've got to be careful because I think salespeople get a bad rap, right? They do an incredibly hard job, right? And another very brief story at this point, just to ratify it, which was a life lesson to me, which fits into this tapestry, was I was very busy, had a sales phone call. I said I'll call them back. I'll put them on hold. And I was I forgot. The salesperson stayed on there for 15 minutes and then hung up. Absolute hero. I didn't mean it. You never know when things come around full circle. I went into a job. I introduced myself. He said, "Oh, Kieran, you used to work at ITV, right?" And his face just dropped. I was like, "Yeah, it's lovely to meet you. Like, sorry, you seem a bit down." He said, "Yeah, I called you once and you left me on hold for 15 minutes.
Oh, dear.
So I was like,
It was him.
It was him. But what an incredible guy. so resilient, so just genuinely wonderful, and knew his stuff. And this is where I think, if I'm a salesperson, and what role are you in, right? And I think you can take recruitment as a sales aspect as well. You have to understand your field, right? So they've mastered the first principles of what it really takes to be a good salesperson or a recruiter or someone in that field, which is, I need the resilience. I need to pick up the phone. I need to not feel down when I get knocked. They take a really rough ride. Some of the best people that I've ever seen in that field have taken the time to do exactly what we've discussed today. They had a bit of a compass. I need to know enough about this field. This is my specialty. And all it does is, if I'm selling into this space, I need to know a little bit about this product. I need to know enough to get through the door to make sure that I actually genuinely understand what I'm selling, because it changes the way you articulate it. Because you're not just selling off a script, you actually believe it and you understand it's in here. So it comes out much more naturally. And then you bring that human element that you had in the first place, but then you're bringing in and having the knowledge to go, well, actually, do you know what? I'm going to stop you right there. We've reached the limit of what I can explain to you. And I think it's time that we should book our next meeting, because what you're telling me here sounds like you really need one of our specialists to come through the door. But you can't get to that point unless you've earned the respect of how actually this individual does know what they're talking about and what they're selling. So it comes with maturity, comes with experience. But again, on this company, I needed a little bit of knowledge. I needed a little bit of skill over here. They're the type of things that you need to think about. But again, they are still complementary things, more often than not, within their job, because it's a particular product aspect of something, a role. But then how do you take a step out? And it's also then you go, well, if I'm selling into COOs, what on earth does a COO do? Right? If you're in sales, you should really understand what a day in the life of a COO really looks like. So again, it might feel like this. How am I going to find that out? Well, you have to go try, call one, ask them, get to know one. So you know that if you're calling a particular time of day, it's the worst. Is my product actually of any value to that particular persona? So there's just all these, it's about thinking and really reaching out and grabbing the new things. Otherwise, we could just turn around and just make more phone calls, which does, well, if you argue, for some, the funnel will work.
So in that example you walk through, what I'm hearing is my fundamentals, my basic skills are learning how to sell and the disciplines of making calls and all the rest of it. The connecting skills is going a bit beyond and understanding much more about the life and trials and problems of the customers I'm selling into. So that's sort of going out my comfort zone and finding those things. And then experimentation would be not just sticking to the playbook about, I don't know what it is, but like make 20 phone calls before 10 o'clock, but try something different, put a suit on and go and stand outside a train station, for argument's sake. So all of that experimentation broadens you out.
Completely. And quite often, well, we have to be slightly careful, because depending on where you are, what you're doing, sometimes it's frowned upon. Right? Don't experiment, stay within your lane. But I think there are just ways that you can create safe experiments as well. Like your 20 calls, don't say the same thing 20 times. If you take a step back and you genuinely think about it, you go, I need to actually test a little bit here. Right. And so this, again, I'm jumping off the back of brilliant salespeople that I've spent time with. So they've gone, I've got 20 customers. You might not get through to all of them, but on whoever I get through to, I'm going to try this comment 3 times. I'm going to try this one 3 times, this one 3 times, and I'm going to learn from it. And they're the people who just excel really quickly, because they're experimenting, trying and testing. They've had a full process there. But what always interests me is, where did you get that idea from? Now, it could have been from another salesperson. It could have just been the fact that they're quite analytical and they've followed that passion and they're trying to push it into their job, not exclude it. So again, it's the compass. There's something I like doing, I can incorporate into what I do. Keep talking about how you move that compass.
Good. And now, just before we wrap up, I want to come back to the CV. So somebody starts their working life with a broad idea of what they're going to do next. They go and they do this. Then they decide to flex a bit and maybe try something different, maybe a different industry. Some people even change careers completely. And they keep doing this because they've got the compass which sort of directs them towards where they want to go, rather than sticking to a map. Now, when I show my CV that shows all of those bends and twists and flicks and direction changes, and I show that to somebody, how do I present that? How do I say to somebody, this is my life's journey and I've made a load of choices, rather than appearing somebody who's just got like a rambled, random career?
Yeah. And it's a good question. I did mention right at the start, it is a danger doing it too early on. And it's a really important skill and asset that, and just before I will answer this question and then I'll put just an outside opinion on CVs as a whole, because I'm quite extremely opinionated in this space. But even in different jobs and different roles, we will always articulate our CV with that flowing story. So even if we mentioned a map right at the start of this, we've still got the compass and it's still a journey in the path. That journey in the path has a story to it. All of those roles, you have now had the ability I've got first principles in all of these roles. I know what I'm doing and I know how to do it. Then I have all of these, how do I weave what I learned in this job and why it made me excel in the next one? They're complementary stories. And I think you have to tell a story for a CV. What we tend to make a mistake of with CVs is I did, I do, what most people want to hear. I achieved this, I changed this, I brought this skill into a new arena. When I see CVs like, it's like, oh, okay, fine. You're a bit of a change agent. That's a scary word for most. No change in here. We like to stay in our lanes. But the fact is, I'm going to have someone and it just proves that you're malleable and that you're willing to learn. Because I think I want to be really careful, because it might sound horrible to see someone in their career who's done the same thing all the time. They're still unequivocally brilliant in what they do. And they may, in the initial steps, outstep someone with a generalist thing. But what will happen when that specialist moves slightly out of the lane, or as I think changes rapidly? Are they going to be in the same adaptability space? Are they going to bring anything new? Or are they just going to do what they've done all the time? So this is something I'm always looking at in CVs, that if I see the big straight line, narrow lane, I know I'm going to get someone who's going to do a very, very good job in that space. But is that genuinely what we're going to need? It depends per company. So in the Scramble script, you have a path, but it's complementary things. The whole point about everything we've discussed, base principles, everyone will know and understand. Your story of bringing the contextual skills that you've brought in has to be part of a clear journey that you're able to describe. I think if you stutter in your own journey, it's your path should be very clear to you. You should have confidence in all those skills that you learn. So it's hard. Getting through the door is difficult. Getting all of that into a one-page CV, which everyone demands now, is genuinely outrageous. Something fundamentally needs to change. I'm very proud of where I've ended up and what I do and how I do it. But I won't lie, I'll be very transparent. I'm still genuinely worried when it comes down to that point. I have to go in and play an automated system. So there is a danger to this. I think it's just ensuring clarity of your capability skills in that throughput journey. Ridiculously important.
Got it. I think this is such a valuable set of lessons. And speaking of somebody who didn't get the first proper job until 24, because I had no idea what I wanted to do, then completely changed from marketing into software engineering when I was about 33. And even within that career, I've done newspapers, I've done gambling, I've done SaaS companies, I've done, all sorts of different things, different roles, different responsibilities, different media, different domains. I know that is one of my core strengths. It's that adaptability. It's that being a generalist who can walk into almost any situation and apply all of the basic principles you've talked about and bring it into a situation, and I'll find a way through.
I think that's it. I will find a way. That I love working with people, and it's interesting. You do tend to orientate around people that are very much about, don't worry, we'll work out. It's going to be all right. We'll do it together. It's fine. Because you'll pull on those skills. There will still be people with extreme specialisms that I will utterly depend on, and I'm okay with that. And I know where my skills end and theirs begins, and it's about understanding each other. But I've worked with great specialists that understand my skills comparatively to theirs, and they will understand what I'm useful for. And it's just complement how we all come together as an ecosystem to make that stuff happen. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think people should, there is a lot of fear about it. I feel sorry for people, which is probably, sorry, I'll take that back. Actually, I don't feel sorry for them. I think they're hitting a tough time, individuals that are coming out with all of the necessary tick box in lane things, and they're all exceptional. They've all worked very hard to get to where they are, and they're being let down by a market that misunderstands.
Yeah.
I just want to say to all of them, any of them listening, hold true. You're going to be all right. Do new things, experiment, and be yourself, and you will stand out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Cool.
agree. I agree. So thank you very much indeed, Kieran. I always say to people who are on the show, yeah, rocking up and speaking for an hour and a bit is only a very small part of it, but all of the preparation and all of the hard work that goes into getting ready. So thank you so much indeed for that. If you're watching or listening, Kieran's left behind a document which has got a series of links to learning material, to things that have helped him progress in his career, things that, so for example, the OECD compass is well worth checking out. It's a model that you can apply to pretty much any industry and you'll recognize yourself in it. So please, I encourage you to go download it. And we always say, please put it into practice. There's no point just listening and reading. It's what you do with it afterwards that really counts. So thank you so much indeed, Kieran, for today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank
Bye.
you for having me.